Tesla buying $1.5 billion in Bitcoin is a big deal, but I'm going to give you two things to think about before you take profits off the table. So here is the K1 filing, and let's talk about for a second what it really says, because this is actually really important to actually read it. I like to actually read these things rather than just hear about what it says on the news. So on January 2021, we updated our investment policy to provide us with a more flexibility and further diversify and maximize returns on our cash. That's really important. So what is this? This is not a investment other than a better use of their cash. So this idea of companies just holding cash, which I think what we're seeing now is companies are so terrified of the devaluation of the currency that they are looking for anything to possibly not lose money. Where they used to be able to put that maybe in bonds, CDs, even anything like that, short-term contracts, what they're looking for now is what can we do to increase the exposure to potentially make money on this cash rather than just having it sit in cash and just losing money as the Fed prints more. So returns on our cash that is not required to maintain adequate operating liquidity. So obviously they're going to keep a certain amount in liquid assets, cash, bonds, that sort of stuff to use as part of their daily operating expense. As part of the policy, we may invest a portion of such cash in certain specific alternative reserve assets. Therefore, we invested an aggregate $1.5 billion in Bitcoin under this policy. There you go, $1.5 billion. This was done, in January. We're getting word that most of this was actually invested sometime in December, but $1.5 billion. I'd be interested, haven't heard yet who is actually the custodian of this. Haven't heard how they're actually managing the custodial aspects of the Bitcoin. Maybe Elon has it on index cards in his closet. I don't know. I wonder who's the custodian, though. That's certainly an interesting aspect. A lot of people using Coinbase. A lot of companies are using Coinbase's custodial assets, but it's going to be interesting to see how, as we get into this, how they're actually storing the Bitcoin. Let's talk more. Moreover, we expect to begin accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment for our products in the near future, subject to applicable laws and initially on a limited basis, which we may or may not liquidate upon receipt. What that means is they are thinking, okay, we can take, you buy a Tesla, you can pay us in Bitcoin. Depending on the laws, they may or may not have to liquidate that Bitcoin immediately and basically liquidate it into cash, into US dollars. So we'll see how that goes. But they're leaving open that possibility that they could be paid in Bitcoin. We believe our Bitcoin holdings are highly liquid. So what they're letting the SEC know is they believe it's basically the same as cash. However, digital assets may be subject to volatile market prices, which may be unfavorable at the time when we want or need to liquidate them. So that's just technical jargon that they're letting the SEC know that they may have lost a bunch of money when they need to sell them, or it could be worth more when they sell them. Obviously, this is crypto. It's wild rides in the crypto space. But they are letting you know what they've done. They're buying Bitcoin as a way to hedge against cash losing value. And very interesting move into the space. There's some other point here, though, that I really want to share with you, because I think this is actually something that people aren't really talking about. This one sentence right in here. So this little section right here I think is important. They're talking about the accounting a little bit here, about how they're going to account for their Bitcoin, saying that when they sell it, it may lose money. They may have to account for it differently. You know, the way accountants kind of fudge things up and down. If it's, write down the asset and then, take profits and all this sort of stuff. Accountants play these games. But there is one very, very important part of this sentence here that I think you should look at. It says, as we currently intend to hold these assets long term. That clearly and definitively says that they plan to hold Bitcoin long term. That's incredible. Obviously, we've known for a while that Elon is very bullish on Bitcoin, but this clearly says how he feels like he's convinced Tesla, his company, to say, look, we're going to buy and we're going to hold this asset. We believe this asset has a lot of upward potential, and that's what they're going to do. But so this is just very interesting news. And of course, Bitcoin shot up quite a bit today on that news. Tesla, of course, went up as well. Tesla at some point was over 2% gain on the day. Has pulled back now to under 1% gain on that news. But look, as more institutional investors get into the space, of course, Bitcoin just becomes more and more of the torchbearer for the entire crypto space. And these are my two things to take a look at and to think about potentially quite a bit more upside here in Bitcoin. One is how much Bitcoin Elon actually owns. This has never been put out publicly. He's never said anything about it. What would it say if tomorrow it turns out Elon actually has $2 billion in Bitcoin? What would that do to the Bitcoin market? Something very interesting. The other aspect of that is SpaceX. SpaceX, Elon's other company, it doesn't actually have, because it's not a public company, it doesn't actually have to report how much Bitcoin it's currently holding. How much Bitcoin do you think SpaceX is holding? Potentially none. It's possible they don't own any Bitcoin. But there is the definitive possibility that SpaceX could have hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin. It is a possibility. Something to keep in mind. Obviously, this is just one person and his two companies, but obviously Elon very much is into the crypto space. He truly believes in it. He got his company to buy in $1.5 billion. I mean, would it be out of range to think that Elon and both his companies hold $3 billion in Bitcoin? What would that news do if that broke today? So something to keep in mind as we go forward here with Bitcoin, but certainly exciting news from Elon. And we'll keep tracking this as Bitcoin just shoots higher and higher. It's an incredible day.